Welcome to the Smoke and Rope podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Basore, and today we are doing episode 50, 50 straight weeks. Really excited and glad everyone's joined us on a Friday. Took my first vacation in a while, and I'm just back to here to do the podcast. So really appreciate it. And today I'm excited to have the second time my good buddy, all our friends, Chris Silva, the retail manager at Pharmhouse, among other things. Chris, thanks for being on the show again.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's good to see everybody and super stoked to be on the show.
Cool. Looking forward to getting in some of the market like we always do. Kevin, Truu Cannabis, what's happening with you?
Oh, not much. Just dealing with a little bit of extra water in the Lansing area. We got a bunch of rain, a couple inches overnight, so we got a little bit of flooding inside our building. Kind of did some scattering to try to get that all cleaned up, which we have. And we're here for the podcast, and I'm super excited to have Chris on. He's super knowledgeable in the cannabis field, and enjoy talking to him. So glad to be here.
All right, well, it's going to keep on raining, so stay on alert.
I know I'm a little worried about it.
Tom Beller, Real Leaf, up in Kalkaska. What's happening up there?
Not much. Just a Friday, man. That means much on the farm, but we're
Yeah,
looking for any reason to celebrate on a gray day like this. So
heck yeah. Well, for those that haven't heard the first show that we had with Chris on, I first met Chris late 2015 when I was just getting still on probation and home confinement, and Chris was the executive director of the first MI legalized campaign. He'd come off a successful bid with the the Wolf campaign, and came right on and hit it off. Did a lot of work together over the years. Done a lot of consulting. And Chris has always been kind of one of my go-to guys to find out what's going on in the market and what's going on with the trends and who's saying what and all the stuff that goes on in Michigan. So we got some good stuff to talk about today. Chris right now is the retail manager of Pharmhouse in Grand Rapids, the only locally owned store there, and one of the first ones on the west side, and great supporter of all three of us. So we thank that. And besides that, Chris, thanks for being on. Why don't, for the people that didn't hear the last show, why don't you just give a brief, few minutes, tell us about your background and how you went from not government, but politics, basically, to cannabis, and why you made that jump and what's happening now.
Sure. So, I've been around cannabis since I was 16. We've been smoking pretty much every day since then. I'd always had like a pretty serious interest in it, and had stayed around that community and stuff, but I was doing some political consulting. I'd been doing that on and off for about 10 years when I got the MI legalized position, and just kind of through doing that, meeting people in Lansing where I was living at the time. At the time we had like 90 stores. Got linked up with a group in Lansing, which is actually where I first met Tom, and kind of banged around in that when that system went from being just completely kind of gray market caregiver into the MMMFLA. Got slapped around pretty hard on the first round of Lansing licensed applications for dispensaries, cultivation, all that kind of stuff, and just kind of over time, just kind of picked away at it, did a lot of that stuff, kind of like you were talking about, did a lot of other consulting and real estate, just trying to find any little really any little way to stay alive in the industry and making some sort of money as it was transitioning. And that's kind of how I met Casey over at Pharmhouse, and that's kind of led me into this.
Well, yeah, it's a good segue. So we had you on the show before to talk about the market, the wholesale market, the retail market, and what was going on, and how like last year it just dropped off the cliff. Now it's back to ever since really April, March. It's been picking up. So where it's June 25th. What's going on with the wholesale market on flower? Other products such as cart. What are you seeing going on as far as when you're buying stuff right now?
Yeah, it's changing. It was much more of a buyer's market a few months ago, and I think like the last couple months, A lot of things are staying stable. Like I think that I imagine if you could see the data, I think that bulk distillate pricing is probably leveling out. In fact, I think a lot of guys are hitting scale on that. I'm seeing a lot of like the big gummy producers and stuff are are the people that are doing it at a pretty high scale. I see them coming down in pricing pretty regularly now. So they're getting a lot lower. But on the flower end, a lot of things that I see being stable is like good flower, you know, like that market seems to be pretty stable, if not like maybe slightly increasing. And then like the the tier right below like the absolute best on the market, I'm seeing a lot of those folks are moving their pricing up over the last couple months. It seems like, and it leads me to believe that there's like a scarcity of that that level of product in the market. It's getting a little bit of a higher price for it. But then for the most part, everything else is pretty low. Yeah.
Are you seeing that then? Because that makes sense. Like we've talked about it. You know, we've always really the idea for us is to kind of stick a price and go with it. Are you seeing the people that got all the way down real low last year and were freaking out? What are you seeing them as far as like the different growers? I saw it all the way down to 800 a pound and 1400, and I'm hearing that those prices have kind of raised back up, or there's been rebranding.
Those days are gone. I think, you know, like there's some people floating in like the so, you know, a lot of people are doing pricing just purely based on THC, which I'm sure is something that comes up a lot in when you guys talk about stuff. Like the customer is extremely THC motivated, I guess, you know. So like some some people that have been pitching me recently have schemes where it's like, hey, you know, it's like $100 a pound for each percentage up to like they cap out at like maybe 22 to 2400, and then everything over that is just that price, you know. So I think that's kind of I've seen that a lot more. And while I personally don't like, that's not how I think about marijuana. Like I do understand the logic behind it because I see it in the store. You know, if you were to look at our top 10 things, like 4 or 5 of them are going to be the cheapest eighths. Maybe like maybe 3 or 4 of them are going to be our cheapest eighths. Maybe 3 or 4 will be like the absolute fire, just whatever it happens to be. And then the rest of it will be just the highest THC, regardless of price point, really regardless of quality. So I think that that's something that I think a lot of the cultivators are starting to zone in on, you know?
Yeah.
Hey, Chris, when you're talking about you know, top quality flower, does that encompass the high testing stuff as well, or are we talking about things that hit on all categories?
Yeah, we're talking like the things that hit on all categories. So like in our shop right now, it's like a couple of Tom strains, the Real Leaf Solution strains. Like I've got 1 or 2 Healing Organic Garden strains that are doing really well. Redemption's always doing well. And then Michigrown is a newer brand. It's very, very nice quality, very good all the way around. Like they're doing pretty well.
Very good.
And that's regardless of THC. You know, like they're like their cobbler and fritter is testing, you know, I guess like, can't believe I'm saying this, but relatively low compared to, you
Don't
know,
do it.
28 or 30%. And that people, it's harder to get some people to try it, but they ultimately come back to it. It's really good flower, you know?
Yeah, that's interesting. I know we've talked about it a lot. It's interesting. There's stores out there that are kind of explaining it and beating it into the customer base. And but how many years? What's your prediction till where like the consumer actually understands that it's not based on THC?
I don't know. And I think that whenever it does, I mean, a lot, I guess, short answer. But I also kind of see the same thing happening in terpenes. And I think I was part of the problem too, you know, like when I look at something, if I see that it's like 3% terpenes or something on some flower, that's pretty, I feel like I've been programmed to be like, oh yeah, that's exciting. But I also just wonder, like, I know so little about the cannabis plant. I'm just like some stoner, you know what I mean? I'm just some guy who kind of just sees a lot of it. So I wonder if that's maybe if they'll just go from that. You know what I'm saying, man? Like it'll be THC today, but like tomorrow it'll be terp content, and maybe it'll be like some unknown THC cannabinoid. We don't know. I think that the customers will always take a limited knowledge base that all of us really have, you know, like, and then kind of take their logic and reasoning behind it and put it on something that you can quantify. And right now that's mostly THC. So I until it's not like a real, like, I don't know, because it drives so much of the buying, the purchasing, the testing, the regulations around the sizes of it, you know. So I think it's just like been beaten into people's head that the potency is where you draw like your assumptions about quality.
Yeah, we kind of stopped the whole bag. The conversation has been had with just about every customer that we have for retailers, and we've even removed some precious strains into tissue culture, waiting for the market to actually mature. And, the crystal ball doesn't say when that's going to happen. I think it's going to take a while for, if it ever happens, to change the popular opinion in our society. Even with education, we obviously keep going. But that's how things work right now. It's all mostly a THC game, bag appeal. Obviously it's nice when everything hits all the boxes, and that's ultimately what we're looking for. But it would be nice if if there was more terpene analyses available. I know a lot of companies are starting to incorporate that. We have them available for all of our strains, but I would be remiss if I told you that I get asked for that often. And it's one of those things that we are going to start incorporating, QR codes on our bags so people can access that type of information if they want it. But until the market does actually mature, I don't know if it's going to change.
Yeah. Hey, Chris, you mentioned I agree. I agree, Tom, and I can't wait to see some of those come out of tissue culture again. They'll be celebrating. But so you talked about distillate kind of getting to scale. Like I would expect from what I'm hearing, there's a lot of the outdoor growers that went way bigger this year than they did last year. I expect a lot more outdoor crops to come down and turn into distillate wars. Maybe all the way down. I think it's at 16 a gram right now. Maybe down to 7 and 6. By the middle of the winter type stuff. Who knows? And then like people can make the argument, well, you're not going to be smoking outdoor flower, so as much. But what we saw last year is like why there's such a more of a demand now is the consumer spending. So, what do you see coming up, Chris, this fall? When does the market take a dive and slow down? And what are your predictions?
Well, there's a lot of variables. Like if Detroit gets, we were talking, Ryan and I were talking about this, I think this morning or yesterday, like the Detroit market, for example. Like I know licensed folks who are totally all of their like smaller, class A's and B's and stuff, folks in Muskegon, who all of their stuff is just spoken for by like, a handful of stores in Detroit, right, on the medical side. And so that entire city's propping up, in my opinion, I think a good chunk of the medical marijuana market. So if this lawsuit stuff and the ordinance gets worked out there, like that could jack stuff up at a kind of a weird time, like as they're going into cropping out and stuff. If depends on how all this stuff kind of breaks, but I imagine just anecdotally from the people that I know and just the stuff I see on like Instagram and stuff, like seems like everybody's popping off like a lot of outdoor right now. And I think the people that weren't doing it last year are doing it this year. The people that did it last year are like really doing it this year. So I think that's gonna drive down for sure the distillate and like so all of the vapes, the value added products, the edibles, topicals, all that shit. I think the market will be a pretty I don't even know that it'll be a dive. It'll be a dive. It's going to dive down there, but I think it's probably going to not come back up. I think it's going to stay relatively low because that's the new normal, I think. And then I think like, they'll divert some of that stuff into, like really, really cheap pre-rolls, things like that. But I think for the most part, the good flower game is pretty much like, like it's not apples and oranges. So like the idea that somebody like me who's in a store is gonna beat somebody down who has indoor flower that's really good, that's normally fetching 26 20 $2,800 or something, down to like 14 because like I'm getting comparably priced THC outdoor. Like
Right.
that's not the same thing, So I just don't see those types of folks getting hit is hard. But I also see capacity and bandwidth cranking up for that kind of flower as well. So it's tough to say, man.
Chris, what do you think about this moving forward? We've seen this now for a few years where the outdoors had a severe impact on distillate costs. I mean, you get down to $6 and $5 a gram for distillate. What's the profitability of people to grow mass amounts of outdoor to continue this kind of thing going? Do you see that for going on for quite a few years, or what do you think on that?
Yeah, no, I that's kind of that's like the double-edged sword, right? Of doing it so hard is it is pretty cheap way to make a lot of money. So it really that comes down to the I think the consumer's tolerance for that. I think that if everybody who smoked weed watched this podcast, like I for sure the pricing across the board of edibles on the adult use side would be way lower. Like the price points on this stuff are the price points because that's what people are paying for it. And I think that over time, like those prices will eventually have to come down, and it's going to become something where like it's only really going to be worth doing, I think, if you're like really doing it, and you're doing it at scale. It probably makes sense if you're not just doing the growing part, but if you're also like processing and doing all the stuff, like the analogy I use is like no one's naming baseball stadiums after like a farmer who sells like hops and stuff to Anheuser-Busch. They name it after Anheuser-Busch, the guy who turns it into beer and markets it and adds a lot of value to it, So like that's kind of what I see happening, already, like I think that the one strategy I see that I think it makes a lot of sense is like you'll get a processor who will work with like a group of smaller, growers and stuff. And so they can kind of run stuff through their processing center and kind of run it at scale. We work with a great group out of Bangor down in Southwest Michigan, Waypoint Processing. We also do a lot of RSO and different things from them. And I know that that's kind of their model, and they're able to definitely stay competitive and do well. But I think ultimately like the days of like the more one-off gummy brands and stuff like that, I think those are probably getting pretty limited next few years. I just don't see it really making sense financially.
We're discussing the concentrate market, but I kind of want to address the flower market when it comes to the winter time, what we saw last year, and the contributing factors to the fall in the price of flour temporarily. And I think that also it just happens to be a coincidence that the end of the year happens right around the same time that Croptober comes to market. And you see a lot of companies, especially these large cultivators, that are trying to get just numbers on the books to satisfy these investors or whatever their situation may be. End of the year is kind of a big push for these guys. And that's partially why you saw a lot of really low price flower flood the market. And it does make ripple waves all the way through to brands like ours. And we had to play along to a certain extent, but I do believe that if you have a good quality flower, it does retain its value to the customers that are coming back for it.
Yeah, without a doubt. One factor that I think surprised us or surprised me in a great way. I thought it was going to go up, but not as fast. And we're coming out of the pandemic. Like, we had record-breaking April, 154 million in sales, 100 and it was like 48 million here in May. June, June's going to be another good one. I think July will be our highest ever. People will be out spending. August is going to be great. But what we saw last year for the first time was the first year of everyone being able to grow 12 plants in their yard recreationally. So I saw consumer spending take a big dip last year at the retail level and kind of caused that backlog along with everything else. So, what do you remember about that, and what are you hearing, Chris? A lot of people even come into your store. They're growing. It seems to be so many people are growing and they're giving it away to their friends. What do you expect on that to hit and when?
Man, I think honestly, people growing weed in their home makes them buy more weed. I think they get it makes them like ahead. So like they're into weed more. Like I get like a lot of our customers and patients grow, and they're coming in to try different stuff. Um, so for me, I don't know for sure that like really drives down consumer spending. I think consumer spending is probably more by just like what's going on with stimmies and the economy, and then just like price points on stuff. I think that that home grows only really only stimulate our market, but I could be that's purely anecdotal just from like the amount of weed that these folks buy who come to my store.
Yeah. We always want to be. That's what we always said. Every dispensaries back in the day, you always want to be the store that the caregivers come into. That's when you're doing it right, and it does increase spending. I guess this year we'll see who's kind of prepared for it at the wholesale level, and who's not, and if everyone learned from last year. Speaking of that, like you mentioned it with the good group down there, Southwest Michigan. We're gonna announce it or post about it. We started to Redemption came out with strain specific RSO this past week, and I know we sold a lot to Pharmhouse, and I kind of totally underestimated the market on it. What's going on in Michigan right now, which is a good thing because I've a lot of people in the caregiver world that to get taken care of with that. I take it every night, and Chris? I know your guys are an old kind of caregiver shop, so. What I know, and why is it that you sell so much? What are you hearing about it? Tell me. I know you're excited about being strain specific. We used to see Melvin do that. So, yeah. What are you seeing on the launch?
Yeah, for sure, man. So we've sold a lot of it already. Like a lot actually, man. Like so, people like it. We're like the RSO store in general. We were moving a lot of RSO beforehand. The biggest reason we sell a lot of RSO in general is because we sell it cheap. We're not necessarily like the market. I think has a higher price tolerance for it right now, but we just don't need to do that and don't want to on like some real medicine. So I think one, we just have a lot of RSO heads coming in, and then the RSO, so the gummy to RSO transition is like that's like upsell number one at our shop, and that's not even really an upsell because we pitch it to them as like the 6 bags of gummies you're buying for like $75 is in this one syringe for $40, and so I think the economic argument on that, and then when you get into like being full spectrum and having like all of the cannabinoids just on the straight RSO, we're getting them on that. But then when we add like the strain specific stuff, because we're trying to get people off of or I'm trying to get people off of the like the cult, not the cultivar specific, but I guess like the indica hybrid sativa gummies and edibles. Like
Yeah.
I just I'm not a doctor, but I feel like that's not real. I think that your stomach kind of gets so hot. I just feel like the terpenes that would actually have the distinguishing features of indica and sativa are burned out of you by the time your body gets to processing them. I don't know that your liver is even capable of that stuff, but I'm not a doctor, but I think that the RSO gets like I believe that the RSO, like when you take it orally, and you're not taking it in a pill, I think like a lot of it is kind of absorbed like almost like similar to sublingually, you know, like it's getting hit all the way down. So I think you're able to like have way more of those beneficial entourage effects from having all of the cannabinoids present. And so I you know, so we just education, I guess, is to answer the short answer to this is we just really try to work on that. We offer pretty compassionate pricing on a lot of the RSO. Like the RSO price on weed maps, like is definitely not the price you pay if you have cancer at the store. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot. I think that's a big part of it. And then we just make it. It's like it's one of our projects that we're working on is to get more RSO out there, more education. We've been working with the patient. We've just been gifting him like his monthly supply of it, and he's working on like a journal to kind of keep track of stuff for us. And we're trying to get his regimen dialed in and stuff. And so we're really just wanting to figure out as much as we can about it and kind of just get people on it. So we're just evangelicals about it, man. That's how we're doing it, I guess.
That's incredible. That's one of the reasons I wanted to do strain specific is because I always have, over the years, I get a lot of calls since 2010, but especially since in the last 2 or 3 years of people either having seizures, you know, relatives, whether there be, you know, even kids and, you know, cancer and just all types of stuff. And I always call Evan over. He used to be at Oma Medicine, the doctor. Great guy, and he's always getting into like, well, you need this ratio, you want these cannabinoids, and he's explaining it and why, and like on the current market in most states, it's just a big mix of whatever somebody had or whatever biomass. So that was really the thought behind the strain specific. Obviously, you have to explain to people it doesn't taste like that, or it's
Right.
flavored. It's going to be consistent over the time if that works for you better than Pineapple Express because of, you know, it's whatever a cannabinoid or whatever part of it, and it's kind of more predictable that way. So it's exciting. We also are going to be doing a program where the stores we're working with, we're gonna, you know, definitely be taking care of your sicker patients and want to get that going again. It's important, and thankful Michigan is so far ahead in some other states than that. But now on to something else. Something's always exciting and fun to talk about, and kind of keeps me entertained every day. For those who know Chris, we talked a lot in the mornings for many years now, and a lot of it's been like what's going on social media in the cannabis world. So we've been watching this whole MCMA thing coming for a while, and Chris, just what are you seeing with it out there? What's your opinion? And then at a store level, and all the backlash against stores that are carrying it.
Yeah, so it's been wild, hilarious, all a bunch of things, a little bit terrifying. All so you know, on a store level, like it's definitely forced like a lot of like pretty tough conversations with us. And in full disclosure, you know, we have like 3 products from those many from Juana's on our shelf right now, and definitely haven't popped off a reorder or anything, you know, like since then. But like it's definitely like, you know, it's so one, I think that like for us especially, like, oh, am I gonna like throw this shit away? You know what I mean? Like I have to,
Of course not. Yeah.
you know, I have to get through what I have. So like the boycott aspect, like I'm supportive, but it is a little bit scary, you know, for me. But I do think that it's good and it's needed because it's forcing people like me to which I was down to do it and I'm gonna do it no matter what. But like it forces like other people in my position and other stores to have these conversations. Like when the High Life Farms guy or like the dude from Flourish or Common Citizen or whatever rolls by the shop and they're like, "Hey, homie, how come you're not putting in an order?" And you're like, "Yeah, because Instagram's gonna murder me if I do that." Like, what are you talking about, my guy? Like, they're gonna take down my Instagram because every comment's gonna be someone shit talking like super hard, you know? And that's good. They need to get that. They need to get that feedback from people in the field who are like, "Hey, got laughed out of like 5 dispensaries today, and all of my caregiver friends, you know, won't talk to me." Like they need no, like they need that kind of like that's how you build pressure, right? And like that's So we're giving it to them, but it's just it's tough to say because a lot of guys, and folks like this in these groups, like when they get this kickback, they double down harder. And I worry that it's going to be more of that.
Yeah, I mean, that's how you vote, right? You vote with your pocketbook, and that's how boycotts work. But also, people have to understand that it takes time. If you're a store and you have this product on your shelves and this boycott happens and you are possibly unaware, that, like Chris was saying, what are you going to do? Just throw it away? It is a business. So you got to run through the product. But I'm glad to hear that you guys are taking that stance because, you got to put your money where your mouth is. Otherwise, change doesn't happen.
Yeah, for sure. And as we talked about when we talked about it on the show with Rick and Jamie, like part of this was all part of their plan. And Chris was around through all the politics since 2015. He saw every step of the way and was aware of what was going on. And they did this. This was the plan from day one with the Highlight Farms getting the first license, then Green Peak, and then Flourish, and on and on. That was what the whole deal was. So they got first to market on a lot of stuff, and some of the stuff is still there, and like Wana and all that. But what are you seeing? Speaking of that, a little bit different than that, Chris. We were talking a little bit about it, but like different brands, some of the national brands. We had a conversation about them possibly going and leaving current processors and growers and doing their own thing.
Yeah, no, that's a trend I've seen a lot this year is folks that were multi-state brands that were maybe like paired with a local operator or processor in Michigan. I've seen a lot of those folks in the last 6 to 8 months. They now have their own processing centers, and they're sourcing their own biomass and doing so. I think that's kind of it's probably inevitable, but I do think that that also points to like our prior conversation. Like this is like the biomass that was created, that was being used to create these gummies and vapes or whatever, whatever it was. That capacity is still around. It's not gone, and it means that there's new capacity that was created for those new licensees. So I think the market is going to get pretty wild.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how fast that grows versus, say, Michigan getting up to, we're on pace to do maybe 1.8 billion or something like that, or 1.7. Well, when we get up to, say, 4 billion in a couple of years, and which outgrows which first. So I'm sure we'll be having you on to talk a lot more about that over the next, who knows, every quarter. Be pretty interesting. One thing before I close up here, it is interesting. Michigan is getting a lot of attention from the country right now, and all over the marijuana world. And it's from the most part, a lot of the bigger the people I know that have been around and made connections with, they're pretty excited about it because, like in most states, these brands come in and these big companies come in and they just overpower and nobody calls them out on it. So there's a lot of positive feedback. They're excited about it and talking about how we're like definitely like no other market in the world. So kudos to Michigan and kudos to all the activists and all the great small business owners. So. We got a hard out hitting, and I wanted to give everyone a chance to say goodbye to Chris, and Chris, a few last words. So, Tom over at Real Leaf.
Yeah, Chris, man, you have impeccable taste in headwear, so I'd like to thank you. The check's in the mail. As always, it's great to talk to you, man. I love having conversations and picking your brain on everything. We kind of got away from some of that as we get busy every day, but I really look forward to having further conversations and hope to see you soon, man. You take it easy.
For sure. Thanks, Ben.
Kevin?
Yeah, Chris, I've always respected your input and your knowledge on the industry. It goes far and beyond what you downplay it as. You're just a guy. You're not just a guy. You've been around. You know what's going on, and you keep us informed, and we really appreciate that. And I give you a lot of kudos for taking the approach you guys have with standing up to the big players. That's a difficult thing to try to navigate as a business owner or, someone that's managing a business. It's hard to tiptoe around that. So, but I give you guys a lot of kudos, and I have a lot of respect for you guys standing up and putting your foot down. So, thanks. Keep on churning and keep doing your thing. And we'll talk to you soon, buddy.
Cool. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Good talking to you guys. Yeah, man. I really appreciate the opportunity to be on the show, Ryan. Thanks very much. Thank you, all you guys, for doing what you're doing. Like some of our best products and stuff come from this group here, so I really appreciate it. I think that's a big part of the success of the store is having really good vendors doing good products. And I think for me too, I'm out there like hyping it. I'm like, this is like the homie. I actually know this guy, and I think people really like that aspect of it. So I just think like for us, we're able to check all the boxes, and it just it's just great. It's living the dream. So thank you. Thanks, guys.
Oh, thank you, Chris. I like that, living the dream. As I do, there's people taking their bumps and bruises now, but I remember back when you made the plunge and definitely took some bumps and bruises at first to get going. So you paid your dues, and that's what's exciting to be in business. And we don't get arrested for this anymore, and we actually get to do that with a bunch of people that we work to get it there the way it is. So always enjoy having you on, Chris, and we'll have you on again. So with that, see you guys next week.